Wanted to talk really briefly about a very major threat that isn't really being discussed by the media on purpose, and that threat is the Kalergi Plan. First, a little bit of history, then a little bit of evidence, and then a possible what do we do about this? First of all, a little history. In 1912, there was a book written by Israel Cohen. It was called A Racial Program for the 20th Century. Now, if you go on Google, which a lot of foolish people will do, you will be lied to. They will tell you it's an anti-Semitic forgery, that it doesn't exist. Now, they're absolutely correct. If you look all over Google, you will not be able to find that book. I still haven't been able to find it. But we know it existed because it was read into the congressional record, I want to say back in the 1950s. To paraphrase one passage from it, it said that their goal was to create a sense of resentment and bitterness into non-whites, and to create a sense of guilt in whites, and to elevate black celebrities. And if you look around you, that's exactly what's happening. And in doing so, they were going to intermarry the races, which that's happening more frequently today than it ever did before in American history. And that would bring America to the communist cause. Now you look and see exactly what has been happening when races intermarry. Sure, I mean, people love each other. I've loved people of other races, not a doubt. I mean, women, obviously. But the fact of the matter is, there is a definite shift in the culture, because when you get two races that marry, the culture of both races is diluted, and you're never getting that back, not to mention the effects on DNA. And there are serious indications that there are irreversible effects on the DNA that for the next 10,000 years can never be changed again. So when you understand all of that, you might think twice before getting into a relationship. And these are things that your average person that got into an interracial marriage never really thought about, ever. You're not really supposed to be thinking about that. We're all supposed to be watching television and watching online and on social media. So had I been married in my 20s, I didn't know any of this. There's not a chance. I probably would have married outside of my race. And I mean, I would have probably treated, there would have probably been some severe tensions in the relationship. And there commonly is. I want to say the rates of divorce among interracial marriages are much higher than homogenous ones. So we have that one bit of evidence from Cohen. We also have the Coudenhove-Kalergi Plan. So Richard Coudenhove-Kalergi is a Japanese Jewish man, and he wrote this book. There's evidence he was funded by the Rothschilds, called Practical Idealism. And someone who translated it into English, she's a woman. She actually reached out to me in the past couple years. Thanked me for mentioning it. I don't remember her name, but she did a pretty good job on it, apparently. I haven't even read the book. I've read the overview of it, but I know it goes in line with a lot of what we see going on today. Makes perfect sense that this is the agenda. But in that book, Practical Idealism, he says that the goal is to have a world of mixed race people who go through colleges and are brainwashed, quote unquote, do too much. And if you look, it's no coincidence. If we look back at a little bit of recent American history, in 1960, the 1960s was one of the most turbulent decades in American history. You had the Vietnam War, you had the sexual revolution, you had the introduction of psychotropic drugs that flooded America as they never had before. And so all of this really served to destabilize a nation that in 1960 was 90% white. Now, was all of this accidental, or was it planned and deliberate? My guess would be the latter. It was deliberate, it was on purpose, because you think to yourself, if you wanted to destabilize America, which was 90% white, how do you do that? Well, you have to attack two things simultaneously. That is the moral cohesion of the nation and the racial cohesion. And that was done because, as we mentioned, the sexual revolution in 1960, birth control, abortion, porn, homosexuality, those were all illegal. And if you look and see exactly who was behind legalizing all those, it was the small hats. And if I say the word, it's likely this video will be deleted. It's funny, on YouTube and in public, there's like one group that you're not allowed to criticize, and it's the same group that has been kicked out of 109 countries. I mean, I don't even know any other race or religion that's been kicked out of 5 countries. 109 countries? What exactly were you doing? And you look around America today and you're like, oh, it makes perfect sense. This is why these people were kicked out. You look at all the chaos that's being stirred up by them and how they steal our money with usury, and this is not new. They've been doing this for thousands of years. And when your holy book tells you that other people are animals and that you're superior to them and that other people deserve to be killed, which is what their holy book says, their Talmud, why are we surprised? It makes perfect sense they would behave this way. And then, of course, E. Michael Jones, I just watched one of his interviews, and he's spot on so much, although I don't think he really grasps the race issue so much. But he said in 2,000 years, the Jews have done nothing wrong. And it's true. Like, every time you criticize them for anything, they say, oh, you're an anti-Semite. You can't ever they'll never say, we are wrong, we apologize, we need to change. We're sorry about usury and the Federal Reserve and communism. No apologies ever. Instead, you're an anti-Semite, be quiet, you hateful bigot. It's like no accountability, ashamed of nothing, offended by everything. This is the group that is the champion of that concept. And it's worked out pretty well for them, because while they sit there and pretend to be victims, they have the vast majority of the world that believes they are victims. And the only victims they are victims of their own sinful, evil, wicked choices. So, so 1960s also as part of the, we had the subversion of morality. We also had the subversion of race, because in 1965, we had the 1965 Hart-Celler Act, which for the first time opened up the doors of America to non-white people moving here from foreign countries. So from 1736 to 1965, the only people coming here were white. And this nation was far superior to what we are today. Oh, all these technological advances and all that don't really matter. You look at poverty, you look at crime, you look at safety in schools, you look at educational performance, and we are, by every objective standard, in a far worse position. And every race was doing much better when America was 90% white. Blacks performed much better. The black community was stable and cohesive, whereas today it is, one statistic recently, 75% of black boys or babies are born out of wedlock, and 75% of black boys are functionally illiterate. You cannot sustain any culture like that. It doesn't matter what race you are. If you have those statistics, your culture is going to be falling apart. And this explains, the disproportionate black crime that we're dealing with. The only problem is the Jews have trained blacks in the same method of thinking. Your average black person, when confronted with black crime, will tell you that this is because of slavery and redlining and racism, and they weren't given equal opportunities, and they don't have generational wealth, so they're like forced to get into crime. Now, there's nothing worse than a person who sits there and tries to justify evil by saying people were forced into evil. No, nobody was forced into evil. Yes, there are people who will induce you or try to seduce you into evil. There's no doubt. But ultimately, no one held a gun up to anybody's head and forced them to commit a crime. If you chose to commit a crime, that's your choice. And this is why your average American is getting fed up. There's a term called black fatigue. And I got many friends in the black community who this does not apply to. And there are millions of hardworking African Americans who this does not apply to. But there are millions that have been deceived because the media is relentlessly in the schools and on television and in the movies feeding them this narrative that you're a victim, whites are the bad ones. And all this is a very clever attempt to coerce the black community into becoming muscle for the Jews' communist revolution. So if you're in the black community and you're watching this, you need to be very aware that you are being used. This whole blacks are disenfranchised and racism and all that, the same media that tells you about all this, they hide the fact that Jews were behind the murder of 100 million under communism. Now, just think about it. What is worse? Just one instance of what happened under communism. Just one. I'm just going to take one story, and there are thousands. Katten Forest in Poland. Your average black person has never heard of Katten Forest in Poland. Matter of fact, I would say a good 90% of Americans never heard of Katten Forest in Poland. I read about it in Reader's Digest when I was a little boy, and it shocked me because apparently the German army was marching in Poland, and they came across a mass grave, and it had 20,000 Polish citizens in that mass grave. And you think, what happened? Well, these weren't just any Poles. These were the intellectuals. These were your doctors, your scientists, your lawyers. These were your leading thinkers in Poland. And how did they die, you ask? Oh, I'm glad you asked. They were shot in the head, a bullet in the head. Just think about that. 20,000. 20,000. Now, if you're a black American, I mean, you might talk about the Tulsa massacre, Black Wall Street. I don't know. Did 50 or 100 black people die? I don't know. And we have serious evidence that the Jews whipped that up. The worst massacre of blacks in America. What was it? Did maybe 50 or 100 blacks died in some civil disobedience? I mean, you don't ever want anybody to die. But we got to put things into perspective here. We got to think about it and critically think and use logic here. You can't just run with every single thing that emotionally appeals to you and think that this is like, the worst thing that ever happened. No, you have to compare it. And when we think about this, I mean, even with the Native Americans, I mean, their land was stolen. But the Native Americans, actually, if you look at it, I want to say it was in Fort James, somewhere on the East Coast, like 500 whites and mixed Indian and whites were massacred, mostly women and children. That was the biggest massacre. The biggest massacre was not whites murdering Indians. So this is a huge misconception. And then we're always told how the Indians' land was stolen. And I would say a good vast majority of your non-whites, they believe this. Well, first of all, the biggest killer of the Indians was disease. And contrary to the media's lies, the disease was not intentional. It was accidental. I mean, did someone come to Europe and intentionally spread the bubonic plague? Nobody says that. But somehow we're supposed to believe that the diseases that came here to America, which devastated the Indian community, those were definitely intentional. Like they put the disease on rags and they put it into the Indians' water supply, all kinds of nonsense. And you got people who seriously believe this stuff. So probably 90% of the deaths of the Indians came as a direct result of disease, which was not intentional at all. It was tragic, but it was accidental. To try to blame an entire race for the accidental death by disease of others is just sick. But, I mean, think about it. I mean, I don't think, were there ever 1,000? No, there never was. There never was like 500 blacks or Indians killed at one time. And especially the manner of which the people at Katten Forest were killed. The manner. Just think about this. 20,000 killed in a very short, probably over a matter of days, with bullets to the head? Are you kidding me? 20,000, we're not talking about anybody. So it's bad enough if you get 20,000 people that are killed. But the fact that you had 20,000 people who were intellectuals, so what this was doing was it was taking the leading thinkers in Poland and brutally and savagely killing them so that Poland would be easier to rule. That's what happened in Poland. That's what's coming to America. That's why I'm so alarmed, because I know when the killing starts, yours truly is going to be one of the very first ones that they're going to target. They do not want people who know what they're up to. They will kill you, and they'll talk about how you're an enemy of the revolution, you're a racist, sexist, anti-Semite, you needed to be killed. This is their game. They've been playing this game for dozens of years. They had terms similar to this in Russia and China when 100 million were killed. But that was just one instance. 20,000, I can't say this enough, because people have to have it emotionally impressed upon them how serious this is. Because when somebody lies to you and when they distort the truth, and the media has been doing this to us all since we were born, If you don't think that these people are capable of harming and injuring and killing you, you're deluded. Yes, the man who will lie to you will kill you. That is a thing. So when this media, and you can't get your hands, there's no accountability. You don't know who's behind this, why are they lying, where are they at, what is their address, how do we hold them accountable? No, we don't do that. They just lie every single day, and we're supposed to sit back and accept their lies and target the people that the media doesn't like, which the media are our enemies. The people that the media tell us are our enemies are almost always our friends. So, yeah, I think it's important to be aware of the Kalergi Plan, and that there is a systematic attempt to exterminate the white population. You ask yourself, why are Africa, China, Japan, India, South America, these countries are not being diversified? Why aren't they being diversified? Well, the agenda here is targeting specifically white nations, the West. So we have rabbis on videos saying that Edom, they call the West, Western Christianity, Edom. And they say that Edom needs to be exterminated. We have a number of rabbis on videos saying this. That's kind of disturbing. The end result of that is one of the many genocides that the Jews, they'll never tell you about the genocides they're guilty of, but they'll sit there and talk about for thousands of years how the Persians wanted to exterminate all the Jews in Purim. They still celebrate that. They'll celebrate that holiday this year. So they always sensationalize anything wrong done to them, and they carefully hide any wrongs that they have done to other people. A very devious, subtle, and deceptive plan. So, America's population in 1960 was 90% white. We're now down to 58%. And it's the same in Europe, it's the same in Australia, it's the same in Canada. And so all other races, it's okay if you congregate and you associate with your own and you give your own advantages, especially Jews. But it is not okay if white people try to meet, if they try to coordinate their interests, if they want their own neighborhoods, if they want their own businesses. That's not okay. Because after all, as one lawmaker just said recently, an Asian man, I don't remember his name, but basically, in effect, he said, Asians, Latinos, and blacks need to lay aside their differences, and they need to unite against the common oppressor. Now, he didn't say who the common oppressor was, but what he meant was white people. And this is what has been going on in America for the past 100 years. White people are the oppressors. They are bad. Just bad, just because. Now, why are white people bad? Well, it's the media setting up the same exact agenda that they painted in Russia and China. So the Russians were bad, and they had their wells stolen and 40 million killed. The Chinese were bad, and they had their wells stolen and 60 million were killed. Now, whites in America are bad, and they're paving the way for robbing whites and murdering, and the 100 million is going to look like a day in the park compared to what is about to happen here. So, real eyes, real eyes, real lies. Thank you for watching. Please share. I don't really trust YouTube that much, but I figure the least I could do is make a couple videos and try to be somewhat consistent with this. I much prefer writing and reading books. That's far preferable to this. But all the same, I figure no effort that you do is in vain. So try to work as hard as you can in whatever sphere that you are in. So thank you for watching. Ciao.